Welcome to the Randy Karraker Show on Sports Hub STL. And Sports Hub STL is presented by DraftKings, where the crown is yours. So I'm kind of limited, and I need somebody with the first name BR. Like if Brooke isn't here, I need Brenden. Next to me, Brenden Schaeffer is with us today. Brooke will be out on Tuesdays until she has her little baby. Mr. Schaeffer, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Great to be here. Great to fill the quota of BR names on the
BR.
panel today. I'm glad to do that for you.
We need to do that. Cardinals back in action. Well, the Cardinals will be in the So-So American Ballpark tonight in Cincinnati after falling last night to 2-12 on the road. They lose 3-1. Looked pretty good early when they got a double from Lars Nootbaar to lead off the game, and then Nolan Arenado. Little help from the Sun to get his double, an RBI double, make it 1-0. Then the Cardinals only had 3 hits after that. It's and we'll talk about everything here, but it's hard to win when you only score 1 run in Major League Baseball.
I like the So-So American Ballpark. I prefer Great American Small Park.
That's a good one too.
The Cardinals didn't make it that yesterday. You need to maybe be able to outslug this Reds team, but they had 5 extra base hits. The Cardinals got their damage in the first inning, and that was that. Some double plays that cost them, made the offense a little bit more difficult to come by later in the game, but not what you want to see when you're in that yard, for sure.
Matthew Rocchio is here as well. So would you guys rather face Nick Martinez or Pedro Martinez? I think last night I would rather face Pedro. He's got to turn
getting
Nick turned
one
into
run
Pedro.
from Nick Martinez is ridiculous, and I'm not saying that just because I had him getting blown up in my pick 6 yesterday on DraftKings.
That didn't probably work out.
No, it didn't work out very well for me at all. Which is the good thing. The good thing though is I also had a bunch of Cardinals hitters hitting more than 1.5 bases, so that also didn't work out very well. So I wasn't sweating it or actually like
correlation.
It was go well, yeah, exactly.
It all goes to crap.
It all went to crap, and shocker, me picking the Cardinals offense to do anything away from Busch Stadium, the fool I am.
When do we learn our lesson about the Cardinals on the road in 2025? That's the question. They're now 2-12 on the road, and they just don't show much. I don't know what it is. It's hard to figure. But the fact of the matter is they're just a much better team, a way better team, both offensively and defensively at home than on the road. That's not you've been there. That is not by any stretch of the imagination a hostile environment. It's a pretty friendly environment, actually, in Cincinnati. I don't know why the Cardinals can't do anything on the road. I get it. Boston, Mets.
Sure.
I don't get the other ones.
Yeah, I mean, the Pirates one, you could say it was like 29 degrees, so maybe everybody wasn't in tip-top shape yet for baseball season. But yeah, last night, that was arguably Nick Martinez, statistically your best shot at putting up some crooked numbers against the starters that the Reds will have coming up in this series, and they squandered it. So you're going to be kind of fighting that uphill climb against some better arms, I think, the rest of the way. And we'll see if the results can change. But 2-12 becomes a pretty striking number. And how that's happening, why that's happening, I don't know if anybody can quite put their finger on yet.
And one thing about Terry Francona teams, and this happened with Tony La Russa teams too, they just get better and better and better as the season goes along. It happened in Boston. It happened in Cleveland. He was able to do it with low-budget teams with Cleveland. He did it with a team that only had 1 star in Cleveland in Jose Ramirez, and he's really got 1 star in Cincinnati so far in De La Cruz, but they've won 5 in a row. And I have no doubt that he will teach, he will coach, and he will get the most out of that team, whatever that might be. But I do think that by the end of May, they'll be better than they were at the end of April. But at the end of June, they'll be better than they were at the end of May. That's just the way his teams seem to evolve over the course of seasons.
And if that's the case this year, they're doing pretty darn well. They're only a game behind the Cubs, who have gotten off to a pretty good start. The Reds, I mean, we'll see what kind of staying power they have in the division. It's up to the Cardinals, obviously, this week. You get 3 more cracks at them. Got to find a way to maybe even this series up. But you're right. I mean, for that team to not have really much star power offensively outside of Elly De La Cruz, and to have the record they have so far, and I think that manager is going to continue to get more out of them. Again, I think we've said for multiple years, hey, the Reds, look out for the Reds. But it was always like an if their starting pitching stays healthy and elevates. And now you're seeing guys like Hunter Green. They've traded for Brady Singer. They've got a little something cooking at this point with that rotation.
They really do. And offensively, you look at what they're capable of doing. Like a guy like Gavin Lux, not many players leave the Dodgers and wind up being more productive away from LA than they were in LA. And to this point, now we're only a month into the season, but to this point, Gavin Lux might be the outlier. He might be the guy that leaves the Dodgers and winds up being better away from there.
I always liked him as a player, and it seemed like it wasn't clicking with the Dodgers, and you were waiting for that to happen. And then he makes the move, and we talk about change of scenery all the time. Maybe that's what he's getting in this instance. But yeah, 352 average to begin the season. That's kind of what the Dodgers maybe thought they were going to get. It never really materialized, and yet here he goes, healthy and producing.
Keith Adams, guys, remind me who we got for Tommy Edman. Well, we got Tommy Pham.
Oh yeah,
that was huge. Eric Fetty.
That was huge for like 30 days. It was big, big for him.
He hit a grand slam.
He did. That was a fun day.
Great photo.
That was a good photo op. Let me ask this, though, and I know that this is a big topic for Cardinals fans right now. Eric Fetty obviously was the key piece of that deal. If you put yourself into the Cardinals' shoes at that point, if you're John Mozeliak, you think he had probably an inkling about what the ownership group was going to tell him this offseason would be like? Like, don't think you're going out and signing a Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, and those types of arms to bolster the rotation. And so Mo, remembering 2023 and how brutal that season went when it came to starting pitching, they had some injuries and they didn't have anybody down to take those spots. I think even though they liked Tommy Edman as a player, they were probably frustrated with how long the wrist injury took to recover from. And they said, here's a guy paid the same amount that can be in our rotation next year in Eric Fetty, and we're going to need that because of everything that's about to happen with his payroll. Is that a defense of the trade that you can live with? Because for me, I think that was their thought process, and I don't know how Cardinals fans feel about it with that context.
Well, here's the other thing, Brendan, and Tommy Edman's a good guy. He wasn't going to come out and say, I want to be traded.
Right.
But I think he'd made it pretty clear to them that he wasn't going to play for him anymore. He was able to come back before he came back last year, and he made it a point to not come back. And I think the Cardinals realized, hey, we are not going to get out of Tommy Edman what we thought we were going to get out of him when he signed the extension. They looked at this year. They had Donovan. I think you're right. They determined that they were going to give runway to the younger guys. Edman's 30 now, and they didn't want to pay him $9-10 million this year. And so that, for them, was an easy trade to make, because I think he had made it pretty clear, both privately and to members of the media, that he just didn't want to play for the Cardinals anymore. He saw the writing on the wall, and he went to where he wanted to be. And the Dodgers, by the way, had been after him for 3 years. They really wanted Tommy Edman, so they got the perfect marriage there.
You know, and it's unfortunate, and Tommy Edman, I think, has always been a winning player. But I can remember back to the January winter warm-up prior to the season, in which he didn't really play last year, and he was walking off the podium after everybody asking him, hey, Cardinals are talking about you're going to be the center fielder. They're finally going to keep you in one spot and give you that opportunity to show what you can do without moving you here, moving you there. And he walks off, and somebody kind of asks a question about, well, you still bringing all those gloves to spring? He's like, well, yeah, I have to bring all my gloves because I kind of know the drill. I know what has happened here during my time. And I don't know if that's a huge criticism of the Cardinals, or just if you're a player, you eventually feel like, I'm established in this league. I want that opportunity to be able to, like, you curry favor for this guy, that guy, the other guy. When is it kind of my turn to have that? And maybe there was a little bit of that for Tommy. You look at the offensive numbers, though. They have jolted up since, like, he wasn't doing this with the Cardinals, but maybe that's part of pouring into a player and giving him the best chance to succeed. Lo and behold, can get the most out of a guy that way.
The Dodgers have a million of those guys.
Yeah.
Look what Justin Turner did there. Look what Kike Hernandez has done there. Look what Max Muncy did there after he came over from the A's. There are a litany of Dodgers players that they basically stole from other organizations that wind up performing well for them. One other thing, and I don't know this to be a fact, it's just speculation on my part, because I've been around athletes for a long time. The Cardinals told Tommy Edman that he would be fine for spring training last year with the wrist surgery. And he wasn't fine for a long time. And I think players do have a tendency, when things don't get better along the timelines that they expect, to get frustrated. And maybe that's what happened with him too, because it did take some time for him to get to where he wanted to be physically.
Yeah, and maybe that's nobody's fault, right? Injuries are tricky. That wrist was something he had been dealing with, and you have the procedure to try to alleviate that back in October. And like, wherever your setting is at that point in time when you're dealing with something like that, there might be some frustration that grows, even if it's not, yes, I can pin this down, that, what's this guy doing telling me? Maybe wasn't like that, but like you said, some inherent frustration with your situation. And then sometimes a fresh start can inspire something great. And we certainly saw greatness from Tommy Edman last October.
Think about the Vladimir Tarasenko situation with the Blues, right?
Yep.
With the shoulder and his frustration with their medical staff. This could be Ben. To keep my sanity, I just don't watch the Cardinals on the road. You can do that at this time of year, right? You can do that with hockey on and with basketball on. But what happens when we get to June? Are the Cardinals still going to be the same on the road? And are you going to watch Real Housewives or something? What are you going to do? This could be Ben. Also, Chad Harrington. If it's an evaluation, you bring up the rookies and stop worrying about winning. The veterans on this team aren't helping you win anyway. Well, Arenado's helping you win. They aren't ready for whatever reason to bring up McGreevy, but they also don't want to spend the money to have the starting pitchers go away. Nootbaar's not a veteran. Scott's not a veteran. Walker's not really a veteran. Mason Wynn isn't. Brendan Donovan, you don't want to stop playing him. Contreras, he's going to be
There's
fine.
a veteran for you. Guess what? 10-game hitting streak,
Yeah.
turning things around. I mean, his offensive numbers have been much, much better over the past couple of weeks.
Right.
So he's helping you.
And then the catchers, it's not like you're loaded up with veterans and you have a bunch of players to bring up anyway. And they just sent Sajasi down because they didn't have enough at-bats for him because they're giving at-bats to young players. One of the things, Brendan, that we hear and see on social media is, I get a kick out of this, Cardinals need to send Gorman down. They could have kept Sajasi up. And you talk to people with the Cardinals. I talk to people with the Cardinals. The whole objective, even as we sit here 26 games in on April 29th, the whole objective is to watch watch Gorman and Walker for a whole season, not 26 games, not a sixth of a season, but a whole season to see whether or not they can do it. We know they're capable of doing it, but that doesn't mean they're going to do it. And the Cardinals still want to find out about those guys. They are not going to send Nolan Gorman down to give him more minor league at-bats when the whole objective this year is to give him major league at-bats to find out if he can play and hit at this level.
Right. And for some fans, it's like, well, I'm used to seeing Cardinal baseball where every game matters and you have to win every game because the objective number one at the end of the season is to reach the playoffs and go as far as you can. And they'd still like to do that. They'd still like to win games, but it's not objective number one this year. Objective number one is, as you said, get a look at those guys and find out what they are. Are they part of the organization in the future? Are they more like platoon guys in the future? Or are they maybe elsewhere because the Cardinals determined that based on what their production was when you got that runway, you know, they're not fitting the mold for what Heimblum's future looks like in the St. Louis Cardinals organization. So if you want to swap out and say Sajasi's going to give you a 3% chance better to win the game that day, it may be true, may not be. He looked good when he was up here. But the point is, that's not the objective number one, is grind out that little tiny advantage. That was what last year was about. And they believed for a point in time, you remember last summer, they called Jordan Walker back up, not to play, but to be that righty off the bench that really didn't suit his skill set, but it was 1% better than what they had as the alternative options in a mode where they were trying to win and reach the playoffs at all costs. And then they said, okay, that's not what we're doing with these players this year. We're going to give them that track to develop. And if they do, great. Matthew Liberatore, great example. He has done that so far, and they may reap the benefits in 26, but that's what this year is about.
September and October of 2023, Jordan Walker came back, had an 853 OPS. He had 304, 363 on base, 490 slug, hit 4 homers, 12 RBIs. Actually, in the last 2 months, 7 homers, 23 RBIs, batting average just under 300, OPS right at 800, a little over 800 for Walker at the end of 23. Last year, they didn't like what they saw, sent him down, asked him to change. I wonder if in some way they might have broken him when they wouldn't abide his slow start and they went and told him to change his launch angle, told him to change his approach. He looked like he had it going at the end of 2023, and they had no patience last year at the beginning of the year.
And, you know, you could even say like the end of 23 was great. I know his OPS by heart from that year. It was 787, including the early slow start, including the parts in the middle. 787. What the Cardinals wouldn't give right now to say every year we would lock in a 787 OPS for Jordan Walker for the course of his career as an improved defensive right fielder. Maybe that's not an all-star player, but that's a producing winning player that I think you would love to have. But you're right. They were aggressive early, thinking, well, this Jordan Walker kid has never failed anywhere he's been. So we'll be a little aggressive with maybe the pointers and the things that we want him to take in. I think at that time, Randy, he might have just been a little bit too young, a little bit too green, and had never failed anywhere before. So, like, you're taking all that in as a young player. I think mentally he's got the capacity to bounce back from that. And if you heard him at winter warmup this season, it was like a fresh start. He felt really good about where things were at. Brant Brown, they're preaching what he needs to do to simplify his game and be himself again. And like, it all sounded really good, but this season is about putting that into practice in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and sometimes when you try to change a guy and change his mechanics, it's like us with golf. If sometimes you go to a bad teacher and your swing gets changed and it takes a long time, sometimes forever, to be able to get it back. That happened to Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley was a decent golfer, went and got lessons, and it messed him up for a long time.
Yeah, you kind of have to do what your game is suited by. You may say, as a teacher of baseball hitting, I wouldn't necessarily teach it this way specifically, but Jordan Walker, you seem to have done some pretty good things. Let me take and learn your swing and then be able to tweak from there. When you're off of your equilibrium, how do we get you back? Not let's create a new equilibrium and make you kind of that basis for what we think a hitter should be. And I don't know the extent to which that happened with Jordan Walker, but obviously he was hearing a lot of different things. And this year, the talk around him was, let's get you back to being you, be simple, do what you do well. And now they've got to find a way to make those adjustments when pitchers are adjusting to that at this level.
Now, I also want to hit on Gorman, because when you look at what good organizations do, when you look at the Dodgers, when you look at the Phillies, when you look at the Cubs this year, not that they're a good organization, but they've got smart people in charge. Houston, the common denominator offensively among those teams, once they make the playoffs, is that they have left-handed pop. And I think that's one of the reasons the Cardinals have to find out about Gorman. There's a reason that the Dodgers go out and get an Ohtani and get a Freeman and have a guy like Muncy and keep him around and say, he's our third baseman. There's a reason that Philadelphia goes out and gives Bryce Harper $330 million, and they go out and give Kyle Schwarber the big deal because Bryson Stott stays with them, because left-handed pop, especially in the playoffs, is a real key. And I think the Cardinals need to find out whether or not Gorman can be that prolific. It's not like the Cardinals don't have other guys that can hit home runs that are left-handed. And by the way, I understand that Chase Davis is a major leaguer. He's at Double-A right now, but the Cardinals really like what they see from Chase Davis. Burleson still has yet to hit a home run this year. Newt Barr is a good left-handed hitter, but they love him as their leadoff hitter. I don't think he's going to be a middle-of-the-lineup guy. So if they ever plan to make the playoffs again, which I think they do, I believe that they need to have a left-handed power hitter, and Gorman is the guy that has the best chance to be that guy.
Yeah, and if you don't have it as a complete aspect of his game where he's maybe pretty one-dimensional with that power, if you're getting those 35 homers in a season, you can live with a lot of other things, Randy. And right now, to your point, they've got guys like Donovan and Newt Barr who they like their offensive profiles, but I don't think anybody is coming out predicting a 30 home run season for either of them. In a world in which Gorman is able to lay off some of the bad pitches that cause him to strike out and flail, sometimes you're going to be drawing more walks, and that will force pitchers to then give you a few more of those hittable pitches that can allow him to drive the baseball. And you're right. I think he's the guy with the best chance in the organization at present to do that.
Eric Cleveland had one up, if we can bring that back. And he talked about how it's going to be hard to watch Walker and Gorman for an entire season. That's if they don't get any better. And you would hope that they're able to get back to what they were. We talked about Walker's splits a couple of years ago. Also 2 years ago, Nolan Gorman hit 27 home runs. If Gorman can get back to 27-30 this year, bring the strikeout rate down. If somehow Jordan Walker can find that magic that he displayed 2 years ago, then all of a sudden it looks an awful lot better. And sometimes it's just something that happens. I remember the Cardinals when Keith Hernandez was a really young player. They sent him down, brought him up, sent him down, brought him up. Then all of a sudden just the light went on.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what, I just got to be me. And he turned into a really good hitter. Sometimes it just takes an event rather than a process to get a hitter to figure things out.
I think that's fair. And look, I think we have seen maybe a combination of an event in a process when it comes to Jordan Walker defensively. Jordan Walker defensively, the play that he made last night to cap off that double play, he has looked so much improved there, which tells us this is a guy capable of growth. This is a guy that is mentally tough. If you're not mentally tough, you don't become the outfielder he is right now compared to what he was in previous seasons when everybody was saying, there's a future DH. This is not a guy that they can afford to stick out there. But from that developmental transition year lens, they've said, we're going to play him in right field because the best version of our roster down the road is one in which Jordan Walker hits and one in which he can play the field so you don't have to use the DH spot for him. You've got a bunch of other guys that can't field, but they can hit. And so you need Walker to be in that right field spot. So that's an area where he has at least made some growth.
I want to give you one other philosophy. This comes from Greg Amsinger from MLB Network. And it's a good point. He said, throughout Jordan Walker's life, he's been a middle of the lineup guy. He's been a number 2 hitter, number 3 hitter, number 4 hitter. And now the Cardinals say, you're a 7 hitter, you're an 8 hitter. They basically tell him you're a bad hitter, and they don't want him in the middle of the lineup. I wonder if that does make a difference for a player mentally, if hitting second or hitting third would benefit him.
And I think in the course of this lineup construction, number 2 in that lineup would fit because they like the left, right alignment. They have kept Wilson Contreras there, and they're seeing the benefits of that now that he is one of the best hitters on this team still. But when you think about it, Herrera is coming back any minute now, and it may be a situation where now would be kind of the time to try that out with Walker, see if you jar something loose. And like he's batting in front of some of the, I don't know how much you believe in like protection in the lineup.
I do.
It's certainly a factor of those guys in the middle are more productive, and so they might have to throw Walker some better pitches in that 2-hole. I wouldn't hate that at all.
Last night, the 14th quality start for the Cardinals. They're tied with Houston for the major league lead in quality starts at 14. However, historically, you win, I think, about 72-73% of your games that you get a quality start in. The Cardinals are 6-8 when they get a quality start this year.
I can think of a number of occasions. I mean, Palante going 6-3 last night. You had Sonny Gray go 6-3 recently. They've had a lot of those types of starts where that's the way you would tailor make this rotation is to say, let those guys go 6 innings, give up 3 runs, have your offense score 4 or 5, and let the bullpen shut it down in the 7th, 8th, 9th like it did last year. You're not getting the consistency of that offense. I think they've had 8 or 9 times where they've scored 1 or fewer run. And we know the struggles of the middle relief crew so far this season.
And by the way, as you see there, the Astros 9-5 in their quality start. So it'd be nice if the Cardinals could reward those starting pitchers that are giving them reasonable outings with a win here.
They'd be above 500. I mean, if you gave them that 9-5 instead of 6-8, the Cardinals would be a game above 500, and we'd be talking about a team, nipping at the heels of teams like the Cubs and the Reds.
And to me, that's the key as we wrap up this segment on the Cardinals is the Cubs and the Reds, I think. And I think the Cubs, I think they're really good. I don't know if they'll go out and replace Justin Steele for spending $8 million on a manager. They haven't been that aggressive in giving him a really good roster. But right now, you look at what they're doing. They're just playing better ball than the Cardinals are. And so are the Reds. And I have to think at some point, the Brewers, who are playing pretty well too, they're going to go on a little bit of a run too, because they always do.
They always do, and you always want to count them out at the beginning of the season, and lo and behold, you get to the end of September, and there they are. But it was interesting with the Brewers being in town over the past weekend, hearing from some of their writers and reporters about, there's some team meetings going on. Like, they're not thrilled with the way they're playing baseball, but that's a team that is used to a certain standard in recent years. And so when you get to the end of April and it doesn't look right, they're pretty aggressive in saying, team meeting time, like, we need to fix some of these things.
Dave Rowland, the Cardinals ruined Walker, nobody to blame but themselves. Hopefully he's not completely ruined and they can fix him. But and you guys weigh in on the chat. Do you remember anybody having struggles? And obviously people have had struggles like this, but I'm trying to think of guys that have bounced back to be great after having a run like this.
Yeah, and it's unique too because this guy is still 22 years old until the middle of May. Like if I'm ruined before 23, that's a tough thing to put on a player. And again, I point to his defensive improvements to show like this guy is capable of growth and capable of being mentally strong.
And Yordan Alvarez, Aaron Judge, they didn't even play their first full major league seasons until they were 25 years old. There are a ton of examples of really good hitters in Major League Baseball that were in the minors until they were 24, 25 years old. And here's Walker. He's been up here since he was 20.
And do the Cardinals regret going Double-A to the big leagues with Walker as they did a few seasons ago? Probably. Yeah. I mean, I think they ought to regret it.
They rushed him.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you can't go back and change now, but can you get the most out of him by simplifying, by recognizing some mistakes of the past and saying, the past is the past. This is what we do with you moving forward.
And just looking at the past, though, think about what the Cardinals have had to do with their minor league system this year. If you have him in the minor league system, does that work to his advantage? Because the Cardinals admitted, hey, we weren't spending money down there and we were deficient in our development of players. Obviously, not only the development of players, but the usage of players. For me, it was patently unfair for the Cardinals to have Jordan Walker start in right field on opening day of 2023 with something like 30 games in the outfield in the minor leagues and then 30 games in spring training of playing outfield under his belt. He had never played the outfield in his life. And they say, we'll move you out there. Anybody can do that.
Yeah, the bat plays, right? That was the argument. It's interesting, Randy, to think about the way this organization, and maybe we shouldn't expect it to have gone any differently because it's when you're faced with, hey, Albert Pujols is around for a long, long time, and this is just what great players do. Yadier Molina, this is just the way that they handle things. And you go, all right, Jordan Walker, first round pick, he's pretty good. Like, and you just expect that guy to develop in the way that those players did, where it's like superhuman abilities, Hall of Fame caliber abilities. And then it's like, well, some guys need a little bit more. They need to be coached up. They need to have that guidance. And I think to an extent, we certainly saw it with like Wilson Contreras when he came over. The Cardinals were like, go be Yachty behind the plate.
Yeah,
and he was
right.
like, what are you talking about? The pitchers hate me. And so like that aspect of it is interesting to think about in terms of how did the Cardinals get to this point? They kind of were able to rest on the laurels of the greatness of players that just kept falling into their laps. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I was telling a friend yesterday a story about when Joe Torre was in his last year here. He knew he was on the hot seat. And so he brought in Bob Gibson as his pitching coach. And one time I'm down by the bullpen and he's talking, I don't even remember who the young pitcher was. He says, Gibby, how do you throw that slider that you threw? You know, he was aware of him. Gibby had retired 20 years earlier, but the pitcher was aware of who Bob Gibson was. He said, how do you throw it? And Gibby said, well, you just grip it like this and throw it. And but how do you throw it? You just throw it. and so that's what you're talking about. You tell Wilson Contreras, well, just go do the job. Well, how? You just go do it.
The last guy did it. I don't know.
Right. So some people are able to just do it. I mean, Albert spent as much time in the minor leagues, right? He spent 99 and 2000 in the minor leagues. And he had as much time in the minors as Jordan Walker, actually less, because Walker had the 21 and 22 seasons, although 21 was truncated. So Walker probably had about as much time in the minors as Albert Pujols did. But Jordan Walker is not Albert Pujols, probably should not have been compared to Albert Pujols, as we saw here on the screen earlier. And he needed more quality development. And I think to your point, the Cardinals say, yeah, just go out and do it. And it's not that simple.
And while you're changing positions, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not arguing that the Cardinals ultimately changing Walker's position wasn't for the better, because I'm not sure he would have stuck at third. I honestly don't know about first base. Everybody says, I go play first base. It's easy. And like, it's not always necessarily that easy to learn the position. And so outfield, maybe with that strong arm, right field might've been where he was destined to go, but not 35 games at the big league level after you've played outfield in Double-A for a month.
Yeah,
That's
I
tough.
think at least, and granted, Goldie was here. He wasn't going to play first base in front of Paul Goldschmidt, but at least he had played corner infield before.
Sure.
Granted, it was the other side of the diamond.
Yeah.
But at least he had done it before. But that's all water under the bridge right now. You will be able to talk Cardinal baseball after the game tonight in Cincinnati, second game of a 4-game series and a 4-game trip. And you can talk about it after the game with Cards Hub 365. It's going to be awesome. It's brought to you by Gray Bar, and Cards Hub 365 provides you every opportunity to commiserate about what's going on with the Cardinals. Brenden Schaeffer does a lot of the Cards Up 365 post-game shows. Are you doing tonight, as a matter of fact?
So I will be this afternoon at 1 p.m.
Okay.
I think I'm on with Steph and Carey, and then it'll be a different crew for the post-game after the Cardinals via the Reds. So you will hear from me just this afternoon, I think, will be my next shot.
Do people get mad, by the way, in the post-game shows?
No, never.
Okay.
They're usually really excited and happy about things.
Matthew wants to weigh in here. Well, let's...
I just have a scheduling point. It'll be Ethan Hannaford and Sarah Daly on your post game tonight
There you
on
go.
Cards Hub, post game on Sports Hub STL, presented by Hot Shots and DraftKings. The crown is yours.
The crown is yours. Well, not yours,
Crown is
Rock.
yours.
Yesterday, the crown was very much not yours.
Very much not mine.
With your pick six
if you
picks.
took if you took any positive Reds hits in your pick six, it was the crown was yours.
Well, better luck next time.
Tomorrow night, it doesn't seem like the Blues should be playing tonight.
It kind of feels like it.
I'm anxious here.
I am anxious. And you think about it, between games 3 and 4, they had the 8:30 start and then the noon start. So it was 3 days, but really more like 2.5 days. But then you go from noon Sunday to Wednesday at midnight. That's going to be like 3.5 days of waiting and coming off of the way that they played so sharp in games 3 and 4 at home. You're kind of itching to get back out there, I'm sure.
Yeah, sometimes well, in my younger days, for a playoff game, I would peak too soon. I'm able to really pace myself now as we
as a viewer of the games. Okay,
so I will reach my peak tomorrow night at about 8:30.
There you go,
and it'll be perfect. But back in the day, I didn't always have that ability. But I want you just to here's the thing to do. If you get really excited about watching the Blues tomorrow night at noon today, after we're off of this show, the thing that I learned when I had my heart surgery is you got to smell the flowers and blow out the candles. So here's a great way to relax, people. Everybody, 1, 2, 3, smell the flowers, blow out the candles. Take deep breaths. And then
Feels good.
Yeah, it does. It makes you feel good. And then tomorrow, get ready, and as long as you're watching at home or you're Ubering to a bar, get yourself all lubricated up by 8:30. You can be ready to rock and roll.
It's going to be exciting. I mean, those two games that they played at home, look, the Jets got the benefit of they get to play the home game majority. They don't have to win on the road because of their regular season strength. But the Blues, they've outplayed the Jets so far in this series. I don't think there's any question about that. You look at how close games 1 and 2 were. The Blues just ran out of steam in the end, and then they really found their game at home. Translating that to their place and winning game 5 will make all the difference, because then you set up the potential party in St. Louis on Friday night. And man, if they can just keep playing the way that they're going right now, I have a lot of faith that they're going to be able to do that.
St. Louis is not a football town, says Stephen Martell. Come on, Stephen. Why would you do that to us? Why did you do us that way?
We're in a good mood talking about the Blues, just throwing that out there for no good reason.
Is it just because we had a couple of terrible owners, one that couldn't wait to leave the town so that he could go to the greener pastures of Los Angeles and spend $5.5 billion on a stadium in the most highly taxed state in the union? I would suggest that St. Louis is a fine football town, that we supported a football team that at times was awful. As a matter of fact, the St. Louis Rams.
Understatement.
Yeah. Oh, well, first of all, yeah, that's a good point, Matthew. They were trying to leave.
Not only,
so they disassembled their team starting in 2010.
I'm sorry, but has there ever been a more obvious case of the movie Major League happening in an
real
actual
life?
sporting franchise?
Yep.
It's the only one.
Yeah. It is what they did to a football town was criminal. And by the way, all we have to do if we want to say we're not a football town, the only response we need is to say St. Louis Battlehawks.
Single-handedly keeping the league relevant with the fan base that's in St. Louis.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have another city in that league doing what St. Louis is doing for minor league football.
It's amazing.
Not only that, do you guys realize what it takes for things in St. Louis to get national attention that aren't the St. Louis Cardinals?
Right. Yeah.
The fact that multiple times on national level podcasts, they don't talk about the UFL, but they acknowledge that fact that St. Louis
that's
runs
what
the
it
UFL.
is.
That's not nothing. It's not really anything for the UFL, but the fact that St. Louis actually gets that credit, the fact that John Gruden's buying in the way he is on national podcasts, it's not nothing. It doesn't happen a lot.
No. So from the time the St. Louis Rams came here, let's start with this. When the Rams came here for the 66,000 seat stadium, there were 72,000 account requests for tickets, not 72,000 requests for tickets, but 72,000 account requests for about 200,000 tickets for a 66,000 seat stadium. Obviously, they were all fulfilled. Every single Rams game from 1995 until a 2007 0-8 start was sold out. After they started 0-8 in 2007 was the first time that they didn't have a sellout. And they continued to sell out from opening day of the 2010 baseball season until the last day where they were here. They didn't sell out all the time, but there was still tremendous fan support, despite the fact that the team was, as Matthew pointed out, being deconstructed to alienate the fan base. So I think that St. Louis is an outstanding football town, and I, as a St. Louis sports fan, I take offense to people that say that we aren't. And by the way, Kevin Demoff with his little book report in the relocation proposal, he said it wasn't but you know what they did? Here's how disingenuous Kevin Demoff is, and by the way, how stupid the NFL owners are, which they are. But all of the references they made were to the city of St. Louis, how St. Louis was a shrinking city. Talked about the city. So I asked him after the move was approved and everything, I said, why didn't you talk about the St. Louis market rather than just the city of St. Louis? He said, I don't know. I
think he does know.
Yeah,
I think he knows exactly why.
Bozo.
By the way, and you've always had great comments on the topic, Randy. Do you have the distinction that I have, though? I recently found this out. I'm actually blocked by Kevin Demoff on Twitter because eventually I sent enough tweets that he's like, all right, enough with this guy. But I consider that a badge of honor. I really do.
Yeah, I just stopped following him. Don't pay attention to him.
Sure.
And I never.
I went out of my way to antagonize. In fairness,
yeah, so no, he did not. Interestingly enough, block me. But if he did block you, I'm proud of you.
Made it happen.
So I'm very proud of you.
Yep.
So that's a good thing. So anyway, I guess my point is, and here we went from talking Blues to St. Louis being a football
They
town.
got us off it.
Yeah, but we are a great football town. Samuel Howe, he's buying the Cardinals, right? So back in the day,
Oh my goodness.
when Stan was considered relatively normal, he's not now, but he would tell people, including I believe our own Bernie Miklasz, and I was in the room one time when he said it too, that the dream franchise that he wanted to own, the dream franchise that Enos Slaughter, Stan Musial,
There you go.
wanted to own was the St. Louis Cardinals. I don't think that the DeWitt family would do that. I
No,
don't think that
I'm going to, when that day comes, I'll react to it appropriately, but I'm just going to shut it down for the time being. Couldn't imagine it.
Yeah, I can't either. So it's a fun rumor. And Stephen Martell, the NFL will not return to St. Louis. Yeah, when you when you are forced to write a $790 million check, because of what you did to a community, you aren't coming back.
I saw Randy. They could put those AI, Chat GPT, different things. People ask it, and somebody asked it the next, predict the next 100 or whatever, 75 NFL Super Bowl championships. And they had on there, like in the year 2074, the St. Louis Archers. And I said, yeah, it's probably going to take about 50 years to think about getting a team again. So that's probably about appropriate. Yeah,
it's not going to happen. This market is not going to build a stadium. We see that the DC's stadium is going to cost north of $3 billion.
Yep.
In Nashville, they're going to be north of $2 billion. It's north of $2 billion in Buffalo. Our community is not prepared to build a $2 billion stadium. I just don't think that that'll happen.
No, but maybe our community is prepared to celebrate a Stanley Cup. You never know. We still got stuff going on,
ready
gang.
For another Stanley Cup. We're capable, and I would argue that when you look around the other games and other series now, one thing I think the Blues have, and I think it's actually a pretty easy decision. I think Jordan Binnington's the best goalie still playing.
I think he's the best playoff goalie playing for sure.
Yeah, and that's what matters right now.
Yeah, and Connor Hellebuck is, congratulations on the Vezina finalist, Connor Hellebuck. But right now, I would take Binnington in the remainder of this series. We've certainly seen it to this point, and that's such a difference maker. But it was important, I think, in games 3 and 4 to see the Blues kind of come together and find what their identity looks like while Holloway is still out of the lineup. We hadn't necessarily seen them find their game in the way that they need to with him not part of the mix. And for them to do that the way that they did, now can they take that party on the road is going to be the only question left.
And I think now, because I think the young players, I don't know if they were intimidated, but they just, the neighbors, the Kairus of the world, I don't think that they really got the intensity of the playoffs when they started. Now you've done
You saw it at home too, right? You got a chance to go, oh, this is what it's about.
Yeah. And what they have to do, and they did it early, but you have to do it. You have to score the first goal. You have to get their crowd out of it. But the other part of it that you have to do is kind of pound them into submission.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things about the schedule. And we're going to talk about the schedule in a moment. The newsletter, though, is something that you need to know about. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page and like this video. If you haven't already, go to sportshubstl.com and sign up for the Hub newsletter. Sent to your inbox twice a week, and anytime St. Louis sports news breaks, you'll be the first to know about Sports Hub STL events and merchandise. Get exclusive content and prize opportunities and more. And while you're on the site, check out all the St. Louis sports content, including game recaps, programming highlights, sports news and opinion, gambling tips, and more. Head to sportshubstl.com. Okay, one of the things that Coach Montgomery said early in the series, might have even been before the series started, was that, it was, I think, after game 1. With the 3 2-day breaks, he said, one of the things that I would like, and I can't control it, is that when you do hit a team a lot, like the Blues did. Remember, Shen had 7 hits in the first period of game 1, 9 hits. The Blues had like 40. He said, rather than having a 2-day break in between, I'd like to have a 1-day break so that we can hit them some more. And I love s'mores, by the way. But obviously, the schedule is the schedule. So the Blues haven't been able to pound on them, but there's also an upside to these 2-day breaks. And we had Jeremy Rutherford on the show yesterday here on the Randy Karraker Show, and he talked about the 2-day breaks 3 times during this series.
are scheduled, and the Blues had a Brooks and Dunn concert Friday. They had a Cat Williams show on Saturday. And so therefore, because of that, they had to separate and make games 3 on Thursday and 4 on Sunday. Well, now you go back to Winnipeg. You can't play today, right? Winnipeg has a concert on Tuesday, Bush concert. I'm too old. That's one of my bands, though, right? And then so they're going to play Game 5 on Wednesday. So you have had 3 games, Randy and Brooke, in 9 days. 3 games in 9 days. I think that gives the Blues an advantage for this reason. It took 4 days in Winnipeg to play games 1 and 2. So the Blues were up there. You play bang, bang, you lose. You don't have much time to stew over it. Then you lose game 2. You're excited to get back home, where at that point you'd won 12 in a row, right? So then with the 2 days off, the Blues are with their families, go on a nice walk. The Winnipeg players are stewing in the hotel about a 7-2 loss in game 3. Connor Hellebuck, has to sit there and think about it. And then they get another 2 days off. And now the Blues don't have to go back to Winnipeg until tomorrow. You're right up there. You play the game, you come back. So I think because of the scheduling, because of the way that things have worked out, not only has it allowed guys like Thomas Karraker to recover, but also, guys, the physicality in the series. Blues are number 1 in hits per 60 minutes, 45.3 hits per 60 minutes in this series. And they're able to recharge the batteries with these 2-day breaks and keep coming at you. I know people can say the same is said for Winnipeg, but the Blues are a team that thrive on this, playing this way, and they're getting a chance, like I said, to recharge those batteries.
And I think the key there is the Blues arguably have their top defenseman, Colton Parayko, and their top forward, Robert Thomas, dealing with injuries. And if you give those guys an extra 24 hours to recover, it's going to make a difference. And I have to believe it has made a difference since the Blues got back home and started playing against Winnipeg here.
Yeah, when you've been the harder hitting team, like you say, well, the break is going to be beneficial to those guys on the other side, and there's some validity to that. I think he even mentioned it, Jim Montgomery did after game 3, when he said the way that we hit tonight and finish checks and all those things, that's when you kind of want to be playing 2 nights from now, but we'll regroup for Sunday. And then they regrouped for Sunday and had a very similar game once they got to it later in the second period, especially. I just think the momentum of that, the Jets might get the extra day, but they also know that when they have to step back on the ice with you, they're going to take some physical checking and some hits, because that's the way the Blues have played this entire series. So an extra day or not, the Blues are still coming. Like, that's what they're going to be able to do. And I kind of like that too, where you mentioned they go up to Winnipeg, they're just dropping in business trip, and then we're coming back home regardless of the result. That can kind of energize you as a road team as well. I think that you don't have to spend 4 days up there to play a couple of games.
And I wonder if in practice in the last few days, and I don't know if Winnipeg skated yesterday, the Blues did not, but I wonder if now their forwards are trying to score on Connor Hellebuck in practice, or if they're just shooting the puck right at him to enhance his confidence level.
That's an interesting question. I do see some practice video from the Jets skate yesterday, and Velarde is a guy that they've been without, who looks to be, it's an optional practice, and it's his 3rd straight day working in a regular jersey, according to John Liu, who covers the Jets. So I think you might see him back in the lineup. So maybe some reinforcements of some of the injured players that they've had. It all stays the same, though. The goal stays the same if you're the St. Louis Blues, and what you need to accomplish against those guys is keep hitting, keep checking, keep playing your game.
And if they can do that, just do what they did here, I have no doubt that they'll be able to come away with a win and try to win this thing in 6 here in St. Louis. But the key for the Blues is just to come out buzzing. And then one thing they didn't do in either the games 3 or 4, they never turned it off. They kept coming at Winnipeg, and I think that's one thing they have to do. One thing I'm sure they learned in games 1 and 2 is Winnipeg is not going to quit. Winnipeg is going to be excessively desperate tomorrow, so the Blues kind of have to keep their foot on the gas.
Have you seen anything from DraftKings on who the favorite team is in this matchup? I'm sure you could probably anticipate a little bit, but I'm curious what you might expect before I give you the answer.
I would expect that the Blues have come out as a favorite. I know that teams that are down 2-0 and then come back to tie 2-2 wind up winning the series like 49.8% of the time. It's a coin flip. So what do we have?
So the Jets are favored, actually. They're minus 175, Blues plus 145. So for those who have interest in that, that's just the information I'm putting out there for you.
And that's because of home ice advantage.
Home ice, that's it. Yep.
And if the Blues win tomorrow, and then come home with their 14-game winning
You'll
streak,
see
things will change dramatically.
You'll see at least minus 175 for the Blues, even as like the 8 seed against the President's Trophy winner. I would be surprised if the Blues won Game 5 if they're not heavy Game 6 favorites.
And Brendan, I think it's interesting that if it seems to me like Jordan Binnington won't let the Blues lose because of him.
Right.
They've lost some games, but it hasn't been because of Binnington. I can only think of one bad goal that he's allowed, the one that went under his pad in Game 1. But Hellebuck, they've lost a couple of games because of Connor Hellebuck. And the Blues have that huge, distinctive mental advantage.
I definitely think that's the case, and that's why you mentioned important to come out in Game 5 and score the first goal and kind of take it to them. We saw in Game 3 how quickly the Jets folded when the Blues just came out like gangbusters and were able to seize control of that game from the jump. It took longer in Game 2, but as you mentioned, Binnington was kind of keeping the Blues in it. I thought they were outplayed in the first period, but by the end of it, you get that ugly goal and you're tied. You're feeling pretty good about that after a period that you probably didn't have the advantage. And then in the second is when they really started to get to their game. And once they took it to the Jets like that, Randy, and got paid hurt a couple of times, they folded like a cheap tent. And I think that mentality, will that carry over at home is interesting because we saw tight games 1 and 2, and the Jets were able to, as the game went along, probably use the crowd to their advantage and win those games. But what happens if the Blues come out 2-0? In the first period, they might fold even in front of their own crowd because you start to get tight. You start to feel, we're the team that everybody said was just a shoe into the next round, and suddenly we're on our heels. That could happen with a fast start by St. Louis.
I wasn't completely confident after the Blues took the 2-0 lead in Stanley Cup Game 7 in 2019. But because of the way Binnington had played, I was pretty darn confident. And then once you go up 3-0, then it's game over, I thought, for the Blues. And if they're up 2-0 after one period tomorrow, based upon especially Hellebuck, I would think I would feel comfortable with the Blues. I don't know that they'll feel comfortable, but if they're up 2-0 after the first period tomorrow, I'm going to be very, very happy.
I would be as well. I wonder if that's going to happen. Like Hellebuck has been over the course of his playoff career much worse on the road. The numbers bear that out. He's got to come out firing tomorrow, wouldn't you think? Isn't he going to be sharp? Like the Blues have to be ready for him to be sharp is my point. Like we haven't seen them win the tight one in this series. They played 2 tight ones, just barely lost them both. They blew out the Jets in 3 and 4. It might have to be a tight win in 5 if you see the beginning of that game, Hellebuck come out and look sharp. But I thought he looked sharp in Game 4 to begin, and the Blues wore him down. And once they got through, it's like it's in my head. There's a puck in my crease, and I can't find it. And Braden Shen's putting it past me. Like they just got to stick with their game, and he could crack at some point in time.
Yep, just take away his eyes and get those feet in the crease. Meanwhile, last night, Dallas trampled Colorado. It was a 3-2 game. Actually, it was a 3-0 game. Colorado comes back with 2 quick ones to make it 3-2, and then Dallas scores 2 quick ones to make it 5-2. They wind up winning 6-2. I don't want Colorado to win, but I do want Colorado to win. I would, if Colorado wins, they're going to have to do it in 7.
Right.
And I think I'd rather face their goalie, Wedgwood, than Jake Ottinger.
I'm very uncomfortable with the notion of planning ahead, but I understand that it's something that we can you kind of do look at it a little bit. You win Game 5, and then it'll be out of control on Thursday and Friday's shows when you're going, all right, what are we watching here for the Stars and the Avs? What's going on? Because you'll feel that confidence. Game 5 is biggest Blues game since when? Game 7 of 19? Like, how do you feel about the characterization of that? Because this is a series tilter, in my opinion.
Yeah, the loss when they lost Game 6 to Colorado, and they lost it.
Okay, that's fair.
Well,
that was
one of those games from the Avalanche series.
That was
21.
6 seconds left. Yeah.
Yes, that has to be.
Oh,
probably,
I remember.
Yeah.
I still remember where I was. Yeah,
man.
I retract. I was
at. Oh God, what was that? What was the restaurant that closed in Clayton that was there forever?
Tony's.
No, it was.
I thought you were at Tony's.
It was.
Joey's. I don't know. I just started saying
names.
But
But there was a place that recently closed when they did all that construction on those side streets in Clayton.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there for every single game of that series. And I can remember the 6-second moment, like where I was standing in that damn bar.
I was driving and hearing it on the radio thinking, oh, good, I'll get in for overtime and I'll get to watch the rest of it. And I start to hear the voices on the broadcast with 20 seconds. And I'm like, it sounds like you need to be doing some different stuff, boys. And they just kind of mailed that one in. But that's the past, man. Game 5 is probably the biggest game since that one. And this one has a chance to have a different outcome.
Yeah, let's just go in, get a win tomorrow, get a win in Game 6, and then we'll move on.
Then
from
we're
there.
talking hockey till June, because I really do think if you get past these Jets, man, the Blues are going to have a little bit of mojo to them.
That's kind of what happened in 2019 after they beat Winnipeg, and then subsequently after they had won the Stanley Cup, they said, "Hey, we felt like if we could beat Winnipeg in the first round, that we could beat anybody."
Tells you who you are as a team and what you're
Yeah,
capable of.
no
I
doubt
would
about
totally agree with that.
Hey, we want you to know about our Sports Hub STL postgame shows. They are brought to you in part by Hot Shots, who invites you to come out to their St. Charles location on Sunday, June 1st, to celebrate their 35th anniversary. The fun starts at noon with a parking lot party featuring the Budweiser Clydesdales. Prizes are going to be given away all day, and there's a dart tournament at noon, a bags tournament, cornhole, at 2 o'clock, whatever you want to call it. It's good. There's going to be one out there, plus a chance to win Hot Shots tacos for a year. How? By winning the taco eating contest. You'll also get an opportunity to meet Rizzuto and Ray from the Rizzuto Show. That'll be fun. Picks with the Clydesdales. You're going to have celeb bartenders from St. Louis City SC. You can meet Louie and Bushwhacker. Prizes all day, and just check it out. Congratulations to our friends at Hot Shots on 35 years. Hot Shots, St. Louis home for all the games, all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com. Okay, Brendan, I got a question for you.
Sure. I was doing some calendar hunting while you were talking there.
What'd you find?
Well, last year's Western Conference final ended on June 2nd, so I'm thinking you could have a Blues game that day on June 1st, and they'll, I'm sure, incorporate it at the Hot Shots party just in case.
That'll be great.
Taking a look at that.
Did you see that Shedeur Sanders' brother Shiloh has fired his agent, Deion Sanders, and hired Drew Rosenhaus as his new representative?
I saw those guys were doing, they do like the Twitch streaming, and they're always talking to their fans as the draft was going on. Both Shedeur and Shiloh were talking about it, and they kind of said it jokingly. They got to fire our agent.
Yep, Dad was our agent.
And I guess they actually did.
But that hasn't been working out too good. So today I had to sign with an agent. That's pretty funny.
It is funny. I think it's real. I don't know why. If there's a report on it being Rosenhaus, that tells me it's probably a real story.
He did it while hosting a Twitch live
That's what
stream.
I'd seen that.
That's what you saw. And so now he has hired Drew Rosenhaus.
Yeah. I wonder, they seem like a tight-knit family. And so, and even like Shiloh seems like a good kid. They were streaming as Shedeur was expected to be a first-round pick, and that's going along. He's kind of there almost supporting his brother more so than worrying about, am I going to hear my name called? And I thought that was kind of cool. But I tell you what, there were a lot of mistakes made along the way by a lot of people when it came to that Shedeur Sanders and the expectation that he was going to be this first-round pick that, Randy, I don't know if he was ever going to be that. I think the hype train got out of control.
You are so correct, because if you are a quarterback that an NFL team thinks is good enough for them to win with, they're going to overlook a lot. The organization that took Shedeur Sanders traded 3 first-round draft choices and gave $230 million guaranteed to a guy who was accused of
misconduct.
Misconduct by almost 25 women.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, it happens with like 4 teams. The Raiders do it. The Browns do it. I'm talking about giving bad quarterbacks jobs and thinking that they can turn them into something good. But mostly it's the Raiders and the Browns. But the bottom line is most teams will look past any idiosyncrasies if they think a quarterback is good enough to win for them.
Yeah, and then we see the Browns select Shedeur as the second quarterback they took. I don't know who had, as we got into the draft on Thursday, I was saying, Jackson Dart, I wouldn't be surprised if a team had them, had him higher on their board than Sanders. And, even Jalen Milroe, that's probably a stretch, but it wouldn't shock me. Dylan Gabriel, I don't know if anybody said he's going to be drafted before Shedeur Sanders. And the literal team that drafted Sanders took him first. They took 2 quarterbacks in this draft.
Somebody pointed out that there were 51 hours of live content where Shedeur Sanders was the best player available.
Oh, wow. And that's on, obviously, ESPN.
Mel Kiper doubled and tripled and quadrupled and quintupled down the entire weekend.
I wonder, for as much cool
Reese
stuff
Davis
as Mel
snapping was hilarious.
Yeah, for as much cool stuff as he's done, I wonder if this will ultimately be his legacy, though, which is kind of sad, because he's been a big part of the draft turning into what it is. I don't think he's everything like they gave him credit for on ESPN.
Yeah, but
he's been a big part of the draft.
Like the 5th draft that ESPN ever broadcast, the Colts GM excoriated him live on the air.
Mizzou product Vince Tobin.
Yes, he did a whole if Jimmy Clausen isn't good, I shouldn't have this job.
I think he said that
Jimmy
8 years
Clausen
ago.
was
The time
immediately not good.
Yeah.
Well, but what he said was, and his old buddy at Todd
McShay.
he said that he was going to retire if Jimmy Clausen didn't wind up being good. But as McShay said, he didn't say when he was going to retire.
Touche.
So, but he is, for him to say that the NFL has screwed up talent evaluation for 50 years. I mean,
at the quarterback position
At the
specifically, when
yeah.
everybody knows he had the Clausen thing out there, is
Right.
a convenient forgetfulness on his
especially
part.
in a year, because we were paying close attention then, and people were saying that Sam Bradford had the best pro day workout of anybody since John Elway.
Ball never
in
touched the ground.
1983. Yeah, it was one of the best.
50. Ball
Yep.
never touched the ground.
Right, and so Kuiper's still on the Clausen bandwagon, even though Sam is regarded by everybody as the best quarterback prospect in that draft.
Those are gonna be my death rattle. It's gonna be the ball never touched the
You'll
ground.
be like,
The ball never touched the ground.
why is Grandpa delusional? I don't know. He's talking about some Sam Bradford thing.
We
Leave him
have to
alone.
get to this. Damian Fowler says he wants to see Chef in the taco eating contest. So in the part of that Hot Shots
Ooh,
promo,
chef.
it
It says Shafe. I see the A in there. He
Shafe.
spelled it
I don't wanna
right.
say
Even.
Chef. We're
You
doing
and
it
Damian
at
Fowler
the
in-
Hot Shots 35th anniversary. You
Uh-huh.
can win a year supply of Hot Shots tacos by winning a Hot Shots taco eating contest.
Sunday, June 1st.
And so we decided that we're going to just do our own taco eating contest at
okay.
the event.
Okay.
Us, me, Randy, and a post-pregnant Brooke, which she maintains is actually going to be even better
Sure.
for her. So now people want you to be the fourth member of our taco eating contest. Do you accept this challenge? It's at the St. Charles location, if that makes it easier.
Give me some time to look at the calendar. The taco thing. How many? It's just like however many you can do. Is
However
that
many
the-
you can do.
15 minutes.
15 minutes. And right now, Jay Boyd, the head honcho over at Hot Shots, has basically said that his expectation is most people to go at a taco per minute pace across
Ooh, boy.
15 minutes.
What's the style on these tacos?
They are a larger, meatier style of Jack in the Box.
That's kind of what I've heard. I don't
Yes.
know about one per minute on that. I have some experience. I've done a chicken nugget for years, Randy. I would go and I don't know why, but it would be like you'd have these family events for holidays and somebody would bring a catering tray of the Chick-fil-A nuggets. And
Sure.
you'd be hanging out and you'd just start popping them and you go, I probably ate 20 of these things. And so I got it in my head. I could eat 100 in a sitting
And
and got to 88.
that's very good.
But did not get to 100. And the last 12, people say, you're so close. Nope, that's not the way it goes. So I have sort of PTSD from the competitive eating as it pertains to this taco thing.
If we have to give credit for Brendan for some challenges that he did pull off,
I got
man
you once.
shoots plus 90% from the free throw
I got
line.
you once.
The man shoots plus 90%.
I don't know that
from
it
the
was
free throw
90.
line.
I think we argued on the air and you said I couldn't do 70 and I went and filmed myself doing like 78 of 100
yeah.
after we were arguing.
was
He
nuts.
goes, you haven't shot a basketball in years. And I said,
couldn't-
well,
I, to
don't
this
care.
day,
They're free.
Still cannot believe he shot almost 80% completely
They're
rusty.
free
no
throws.
warm up. He walked into a gym.
Make your free
and
throws,
went
kids.
80% from the charity
That's
stripe.
pretty awesome.
Didn't
It was,
happen.
honestly, Brendan,
He was-
still one of the most impressive things I've seen a non-professional athlete do. In the
It
last
might
20
still be
years.
out there on YouTube. I think I posted it to my YouTube channel
It was
back in the
nuts.
day and I had to like hide it once I started doing Cardinals content on there. Anyway, that is a story. I did best you in a challenge once. I don't know if I could do the taco eating at Hot Shots, but I'll look into it.
All right, yeah, June 1st, and Wilson, are you in for this? You gonna play? No, he's not. Okay, we'll get some other people. We'll get some other Sports Hub STL folks, and you can be out there too, by the way. And you can win free tacos. I don't think we can win free tacos for a year.
No.
You can win free tacos for a year.
We can win pride. We
Oh.
can win bragging rights over our cohorts. That's
Damn
for
right.
sure.
That's all I'm here for.
That's outstanding. A Sports Hub STL presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Okay, so have you paid attention to the CBS Sunday morning interview with Bill Belichick?
I have seen tell of this. I have witnessed some of the clips coming out from it.
Okay, so my concern here, and not concern, but I wonder how much control, how much of a hold this J Hud, not Jennifer Hudson, but Jordan Hudson, has over Bill Belichick. Because apparently, not only was she interjecting throughout the course of the interview, like when the interviewer said, "Hey, how did you guys meet?" And she said, "We're not talking about that." Apparently, there were several times during the interview, which was obviously edited, where Belichick was asked football questions, and she interjected with what she thought was the right answer rather than letting Bill Belichick answer football-related questions.
And here's also an update from today. She posted an email from April 10th today on Twitter. Or was it on Twitter? On Twitter. And it's or on Instagram, excuse me. It's made its way to Twitter. And it's from Bill Belichick. And and this is how you know this is like some like crazy eye stuff. There's not actually a lot of like anything in the body because it's purportedly from Bill Belichick to other people.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't block out somebody's email address, which is you cannot post post private emails and not block out people's email address. So there's somebody there from like a publicity firm whose email is now just out on X.
Wow.
Dumb as hell. But yeah, and just the wording of it is so odd. Everyone thinks
Bill
she wrote
didn't
it.
write that.
Bill did.
I'm just reading it now.
B-Shape knew exactly where we were going to go with this, which is Bill didn't write this email. It's odd. It's weird. It continues to smell off.
Does he care though? Is he like, I'm getting what I want out of life right now, and they're paying me $1 bajillion to.
If you had 8 Super Bowl rings,
yeah,
what things in life would penetrate your bubble? Like what things would actually get through to you to
interesting
bother you?
word choice there.
8 Super Bowl rings. If you had 8 Super Bowl rings and millions of dollars, what would actually affect you?
You're 73?
What could get you? Yeah,
probably
73 years old.
Probably
what could
nothing.
Get you? Nothing. Nothing will get
24-year-old girlfriend.
Well, you know what I mean. I mean,
With
nothing would in a bad
magical
way.
abilities.
I mean, what would bother me?
When has he ever cared what people have said about
That
him
too.
publicly? Right? He's always been a public figure in a way, and in one of scrutiny. I mean, a lot of different scandals, different things that go on when he's with the Patriots, and now he's like, I don't know, I'm going to coach this college team and hang out for a while. It works for them. It works for me. Who's got a problem with it? I think you say it smells, it's fishy. It looks exactly like what it is, in my opinion. But yeah,
but
whatever.
Like it very well could be, and that was my thought too. But now, when he doesn't push back against her answering football questions, I wonder about his mental faculties at this point. He is 73. There's a lot of miles on that body, and I wonder if, and I don't know. But I wonder if he is, in a sense, being controlled by Jordan Hudson.
What did we talk about, though, when it was Shitter Sanders, and you said teams will put up with a lot if they think you're the guy. They'll overlook a lot. I think Bill is overlooking a lot for the sake of this relationship that he seems to enjoy. He's probably in his own mind going, well, this is kind of BS. Why am I dealing with this? But then you know what? He might be happy with other elements of that relationship. And then I think there's another entity in this. North Carolina might also be putting up with a lot because they go, I don't know, he's Bill Belichick. Like, we're going to deal with some of whatever this looks like because we still think at the end of the day, kids are going to want to come play for him, and we might be able to win more games than we otherwise would have. And so I think you've got that sort of arrangement happening on multiple levels with this situation.
I wonder what their level of concern is, though, because that was another thing that was reported in last night's TMZ story, is that they at North Carolina, they're concerned about what she is doing in interfering with his life.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they're wondering now, what did we get ourselves into?
I hope we get to see him coach football games there. I don't want this to all blow up in the summer.
I don't either.
Like, I want to see this. I want to see this thread get pulled a little bit longer and see it play out for at least a football season. But like when they hired him, we all said, going to be interesting. No matter what happens, intrigue will occur.
I know the pictures with him and her look off. They look more normal than the pictures of him with the recruits he keeps taking.
Yeah.
Like I every time I see him in like basketball short, like Carolina blue basketball shorts, standing next to a guy with like who's throwing up the peace sign in the picture, and he's got a big hoodie on. He just looks like they look like, what are you guys talking about other than football? Like there has to be, what is going on in this recruiting visit after you walk away from a whiteboard?
I want to see him.
Imagine.
Yeah, I want to see Bill Belichick doing the back-to-back Brian Kelly dance on social media.
You're in my brain. It's exactly what I think about every time I see the picture of him just standing next to recruiters.
Well,
Can I please get a
Can you
360 camera?
spin
of him
around for
spinning?
us? Yeah.
And I wonder if Bill understood when he took the job that there is a pretty substantial difference between, and I know that people are chronologically the same age, but they're more advanced now. Young men are more advanced now, but there's still a difference between drafting a 21 or 22-year-old and recruiting a 17 or 18-year-old. And he's still going to be dealing essentially with some of his players with boys. And I don't know that, well, he did have Aaron Hernandez, didn't he? But that didn't work out very well either. So he has to come to grips with the fact that he needs to relate better. Does he really need to relate better to young people, or is he doing that already?
Well, there you go. Honestly, I don't think he has to come to grips with it because here's why. North Carolina, you said privately they might have some concerns.
Let me tell you, read what they had at TMZ.
Okay.
The whole ordeal isn't sitting well with Bill's employers. We're told the folks at UNC are now concerned about Hudson's influence on Belichick's tenure as the head football coach in Chapel Hill, especially with her essentially taking on a role as his manager. As the source put it, there's, quote, growing sense that this could become a problem, unquote.
Okay, but if you're Bill Belichick and that's all happening behind the scenes, what's your reaction? What do? Do you change anything? Why? What are they going to do? Fire me and pay me the buyout? Like, he's at a stage in life where I think he's good with whatever comes. He's just chilling. And that's maybe not what you want if you're North Carolina, but that's what you could have anticipated when they hired him, I think.
I just don't know, again, at the age of 73, I don't know where he is mentally. That would be my concern if I were North Carolina.
That's so interesting.
How much control is he under from this woman?
I think a decent amount, but I could see a lane in which he's cool with it. He's voluntary because he's like, well, if you're Bill Belichick and you've done everything that you've done, you've got a new employer, sure, but aren't you going to at age 73 just kind of still act the way that you would have? Like, who are you answering to in life if you're Bill Belichick? Nobody except this girl, I think. So like that,
Yep.
He's like, I can live with that.
Yep. And by the way, they were out on a date last night in New York City.
Aww.
So congratulations, Bill and Jordan. Hope you had a fun time. And
there you go.
As is written, Hudson looked elegant in a black and white dress, while Belichick showed off his dapper side in a suit and tie. The two were leaving a fancy Manhattan hotel to hit a swanky event nearby.
I'm surprised he didn't wear that navy sweatshirt with the hole in it like he did for the interview. Do you think that's real? Like, or is that like, hey, this is part of your image, so you need to wear this because it's going to look crazy and you're going to get attention for it?
That's him.
Yeah, I think that's legit.
Yeah. So I think the players that were around him for a long time, they realize that that's who he is and what he is.
Yeah.
So pretty funny. It's I hope it's funny. I hope that this is just silliness and that there isn't something seriously wrong with the guy.
He's got all the money he could want. If this job works out, great. If it doesn't, great. I think he's chilling.
I wonder
honestly.
if he regrets leaving the NFL though.
That could be
not giving the NFL a better opportunity, a different opportunity.
But he kind of interviewed and was looking for one with another organization and
Atlanta didn't hire him.
Maybe for the same reasons that we're seeing things not flame out, but they're going not super swimmingly with UNC because he's going to be Bill Belichick and you can't really tell him what to do. That's a hard thing to do if you're another franchise in the National Football League.
There is somebody within his sphere who has a defensive coordinator job who would have found a way to convince the ownership or the GM to say, give me $200,000 so that I just have Bill Belichick on retainer for any defensive questions I have this season. That would have happened. I firmly believe if he puts all ego aside, he's getting $250,000 just to look over a piece of defensive tape for a team every week and just give them his thoughts.
But that
would have happened.
But he's got the ego too.
He's got
like
the ego. That's what I'm saying.
I can prove I can do it without Robert Kraft. I can do it without Tom Brady, even if it's at the collegiate level. Look at what I'm going to take to a middling ACC program. Like there's an ego factor when you've accomplished as much as he had. So I get that, but you still want to do it your own way. You don't have a singular person at UNC that can tell him what to do and make him change his ways. Like, when you hire somebody of that status, you're taking on and assuming that risk if you're UNC that he's going to play ball, and we're going to find out. Right now it seems like they've got some early concerns.
And I agree with Let's Turn 2 that they're going to wind up on Saturday Night Live skit. By the way, an interesting chat here. Has Randy ever given his thoughts on John Gruden randomly loving St. Louis and wearing a Bengals jersey while doing it? Very curious, isn't it? Well, it's not random. In 1988, John Gruden was an assistant coach at SEMO at Southeast Missouri State.
Yep.
Loved it there. Spent a lot of time in St. Louis while he was there, whether it was recruiting or just coming to a bigger town. It was the closest bigger town. And so Gruden has always liked St. Louis. We would talk to him when he would come into town with Monday Night Football on ESPN. He was always very gracious and very effusive in his praise of St. Louis. So he's always been a St. Louis fan. I don't think it's curious. Now, while wearing a Bengals jersey, I think he's just trying to put two and two together for us. I don't think that's happening, though.
I also have to think that he was nerding out for 99, 2000, and 2001 while he was in Oakland.
Oh, yeah.
I guess he might have been in. Is he in Philadelphia for 99 still? But
No.
Either how, I mean, that guy's an offensive football nerd. I'm sure he was. He geeked out over
2001,
Mike
he was the
Martz.
victim of the tuck rule.
Yeah, he was with the
Oakland.
Raiders by 2000, I think. I was just wondering
Yeah.
if he wasn't with the Raiders in 99. I'm blanking on his career schedule.
Yeah, he was still. He was head coach from 98 to 01 with Oakland.
Oh, wow. He started there in 98.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he was nerding out over there. He had Rice and Tim Brown. He was trying to figure things out, put together that offense with Rich Gannon. I'm sure he was an absolute nerd of the greatest show on turf.
Well, he said that he used to the thing that he would do on Monday mornings, if the Rams and the Bucks both played on Sunday, is he would come in and first tape he would watch is the Rams tape so that he could steal Mike Martz's place. So yeah, he totally was nerding out on the greatest show on turf. But no, I think that I love the NFL conversation, and I hope that for the sake of NFL fans in town, that ultimately an NFL team would come here. I just don't see it happening. I would be stunned if we would get another NFL team.
Circumstances would have to change drastically. You're talking about probably different people in charge at the NFL level. Decades we're talking before there might be the ability to make money in St. Louis. Like that's ultimately what the NFL is about. And if they see a lane toward that, who knows? But it's not soon.
Yeah.
No.
I think John Gruden is looking to get back in the NFL. That's from Lex Luthor, kind of like us. And maybe we're kindred spirits because he's got a suit against the NFL too. I would be very shocked if Roger Goodell would let John Gruden back into the NFL. And you say, well, he doesn't have control. Well, check out Colin Kaepernick's career after he was done with the 49ers. I think if Roger Goodell wants to keep somebody out of the National Football League, he has the influence to do so. Might not be the power, but he has the influence to do so.
What do you think, though, with that? Because I would almost more compare Kaepernick, and I would put it in the same category as Tim Tebow with this Shedeur Sanders thing, where you're not talented enough to necessarily be a top-flight starter. And so if you're the 35th best quarterback in the world, we're not putting up with the media circus that pertains to your aura as a backup to our team. And so I think that's what got Kaepernick, but I know that's a much larger conversation.
But Tebow is the best comp because Tebow's a guy that if you had him on your team and he was the backup, the fans weren't going to abide him being the backup. They wanted him to play.
Yep.
And the first time your starter ran into any difficulty whatsoever, or sometimes even if the starter didn't, Tebow was going to be at the top of all of the shows, all the sports talk shows. They were going to talk about him in the paper. They were going to, this is back when there were newspapers. He was going to be a part of the discussion of your team, whether he was playing or not.
And now Shedeur Sanders will. The Browns, have 5 quarterbacks. And I don't know if any of them are better than Sanders, but I'm not necessarily using that as a super high compliment of Sanders. That needs its own reality show, that quarterback room.
Yeah. And if there is a reality show, by the way, with Shedeur Sanders, it'll get great ratings. And that'll be an interesting. I kind of wish you would have gone to the Giants with Jameis and Russell Wilson. That would have been really fun.
Yeah, they're never going on Hard Knocks again after the way their GM got shown up in the ownership group. Yeah,
that'll be something. All right. Hey, baseball season is officially here. And you need to know that there's some great things that you can do with baseball season here. And that includes going to the plate with DraftKings Pick 6. Download the app, DraftKings Pick 6, and use the promo code STL Sports. And think of DraftKings Pick 6 as your fastball right down the middle. It's a really easy way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they have more or less of a stat on a particular day. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and even more. All you have to do is download the Pick 6 app, cash in your baseball knowledge, and new players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. It's a pretty cool deal, and you need to go to DraftKings Pick 6, where the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Now, Randy, I know you usually put together the baseball picks for Pick 6, but I got to throw this one out there because I'm feeling good about it. Tyrese Halliburton, more than 18.5 points.
Okay.
Nikola Jokic, more than 51.5 points, rebounds, and assists. And your boy from St. Louis, Jason Tatum, more than 42.5 points, rebounds, and assists for him as well. I think all three of those teams, the Pacers, the Nuggets, and the Celtics, win big tonight. And I think it's good to follow your horses, Halliburton, Jokic and Tatum.
If you fail on that one, Halliburton, he just frustrates you, man.
Are you mad that are you mad because of his talking tendencies?
No, I'm mad because when I say he's going to get more than 18.5 points, he tends to not. This is very personal.
Okay.
In this series, he scored 21, 14, and 17.
Yep.
His assist totals is what usually can be beneficial. He had 15 assists in the last game.
I think they've been sagging off him, and I think he's going to make them pay with a solid 21, 7, and 4 tonight.
He's one of my I bet he even gets more than 7 assists. He's one of my favorite players in the NBA. That's through like years of NBA fantasy basketball. I've always enjoyed when I've had him on my teams. But I don't know. I'm not outright, fading you tonight, but I'm looking at that honestly, one going.
It's more that I just think that the Pacers are going to crush the Bucks tonight. Okay. I just think that's the way that the game's kind of been. This series has kind of been trending to. Milwaukee got the Game 3 win. I think it's going to shift back, and it's going to be a big win for the Pacers tonight. It's going to be a close one between Denver and the Clippers, which means if it's a close game, it's because Jokic is going off. And I just think that, again, same thing. Magic got that Game 3 win. Eric Sontag, by the way, on Friday when he was on with me and Brooke, called it. He was like, just take Game 3s, take the underdogs, and they almost all won. It was crazy. Wow. So I think the I
agree on the Celtics. They're probably
I think the Celtics are going to beat the crap out of the Magic. So yeah, roll with Tatum.
Okay, one more item here, and this is something that in a venue like this is very rarely, or if ever, it's never discussed. And so I want to bring it up here just to get your take, gentlemen. Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred said he talked about Pete Rose with President Trump at a meeting 2 weeks ago, and Manfred plans to rule on a request to end baseball's ban of Rose. He said that he's considering a petition to have Rose posthumously removed from MLB's permanently ineligible list. The petition was filed in January by Jeffrey Lenkov, a Southern California lawyer who represented Rose prior to his death at 83. I look at this a couple of ways. Number one, I've always thought that Pete Rose should be represented in the Hall of Fame. Maybe not with a plaque or a speech, but I've always thought that he should be represented. And whether it was during his life or posthumously, I think there should be a plaque honoring the all-time hits leader up in Cooperstown. I also am intrigued to see if he's removed from the ineligible list, how they would consider him for the Hall of Fame. Would he start his 10-year stay on the ballot right away, and the writers would have an opportunity to vote on him, or would he go to one of the committees because he would have been eligible, I guess, in 1994? I wonder how baseball would treat his eligibility for the Hall of Fame if they would remove him from their banned list.
If I had to guess, my guess would be that it would go immediately to one of the committees rather than putting him on the ballot with the other current era players. That's just me speculating, but it would seem a little funky to I think they would. I don't know. The whole thing has been, for the Hall of Fame's perspective, that, okay, they're on the ban list in baseball, then they're not eligible for our deal either. Yeah. But that would be lifted from the Hall of Fame's perspective if baseball made that move. And so somebody somewhere would get a say. I just think it would seem to me that they'd go committee rather than a guy who would have been eligible 30 years ago to be on the ballot.
And I wonder how many people, when you think about that, the 30 years ago, I wonder how many people that are voting now watched Rose play in his prime.
That's what's tricky. Like I'm I'm in BBWAA. I'm a handful of years from getting a vote. You have to have 10 years of service to get there. And so, like, I'm 30 years old. Obviously, I didn't watch Pete Rose, right? I was born in 94. So you'd be putting that in the hands of a group that has only been influenced by the lore of it and know it growing up, knowing the stories of, the bad with it, but also, you see his videos and the stats and everything that he did on the good side as a player. And so whether I'm not saying whether or not, somebody like me should get a say in that, but it seems that folks who were maybe closer to it would have the ability to I guess, debate that. I don't really think there is a debate, to your point, like he should be recognized, but we'll see.
And baseball gives the voters the opportunity to make that determination. In football, that group of 50 people that meet to determine the Football Hall of Famers, they are given specific instructions to only concern themselves with what happens between the white lines.
Right.
People that are O.J. Simpson's, well, he was innocent, right? He was found innocent.
That's what they said.
There are some scoundrels in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but you're supposed to vote only on what happens between the white lines, okay? In baseball, there are a lot of people that have done nefarious things that have been elected to the Hall of Fame. Some are known, some are unknown, and you have to look at Rose through kind of a different prism than everybody else, because not only was he a great player and a great hitter who still holds numerous records, he was also a great ambassador for the sport.
Right.
In the 70s and 80s, he was the face of baseball. He was the guy. He was all over the commercials. He was a guy that fans went to see at opposing ballparks. So he was a huge part of baseball history. And I think it'd be a shame if he would be judged based upon the fact that he didn't show enough contrition when the Dowd report came out and determined that he was gambling on baseball. Now, maybe the determination has to be, did he bet on baseball or not? But that is in the hands of the voters, who also voted, by the way, to not put people like Mark McGwire or Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and I mean, some of those weren't remotely close. Some of them got closer as time went along, but like the judgments are being levied based on those outside factors relative to what you did as a player. And that is part of the boilerplate that they give you to vote on the Hall of Fame in baseball, but also it's kind of left up to interpretation because, well, which transgressions are worse than others is sort of, there's not like a guideline on how you treat that.
And it is the Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. And that my biggest point has always been with Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson, who a lot of people, the evidence shows, didn't throw games.
Right.
And then the alleged steroids guys versus the alleged steroids guys that are in the Hall of Fame. I think if you can associate pretty much everybody that played with those late 80s A's teams and say, I assume that they were on the juice. There were guys that were playing when they were 45, 46 years old. We know about Canseco. We know about McGwire.
Sometimes you could just look at the numbers too of a guy who's like, what happened that year?
When Canseco, it's amazing. Check out Baseball Reference sometime. When Jose Canseco was traded to Texas, look at what happened to Rafael Palmeiro's numbers almost immediately when Canseco got to Texas. And a lot of those Rangers guys, but some of them are in the Hall of Fame. One of them is. When you look at some of the Houston guys, I think you have to, we saw him play. When you look at Piazza, I know that he's been talked about a lot. I think that the allegations against Piazza, well, he rejects them out of hand, and he has the right to do so. But nobody knows. That's the problem that I have with a guy like Piazza. So we think we know about Roger Clemens, and we think we know about Piazza, but how do we really know?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where the folks for whom it was, confirmed based on the various things that happened, well, okay, those guys are definitely blackballed off the list, but their transgressions weren't necessarily any different than some others. It's just if we didn't find out about some others, and I don't have any names where I'm like, yep, that guy probably did, but I think it's safe to assume we didn't find them all. You know what I mean?
This is why my point is that it is the Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum, where you're trying to tell the story of baseball. I don't think you can tell the story of baseball if you don't include Roger Clemens, if you don't include Pete Rose, if you don't include Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire. And that's why I think when you walk down those hallways, whether you want to put a little asterisk at the bottom that Mark McGwire admitted that he used steroids, that's fine. you can do that. But I think that he should be honored with a plaque on the wall so that somebody who's 10 years old and never saw Mark McGwire play can look up and read about that career.
Yeah, because that career was very meaningful to not only folks in St. Louis, but the game of baseball at the time and how important that 98 season was. So, yeah, you could think about a lot of aspects of it that make you kind of uncomfortable to revisit. But you're right. Like, all that does, in my opinion, belong, and there's some merit to that.
And I like this message from Real American Intelligence. Rose deserves to be in the Hall just on his playing years in baseball. His so-called transgressions occurred after his playing years. Now, obviously, there is suspicion that he may have done the same thing as a player and did gamble a lot, maybe not necessarily in baseball. But as you say, there isn't hard and fast evidence of him gambling while he played. So I would be inclined to agree with you. Put him in the Hall of Fame based on the fact that he played in more winning games than anybody else in history. He played at more 1,000 games at more positions than anybody else in history. And he has more hits than everybody else in history.
I wonder about this angle, though. He was somebody that while he was alive really wanted it, right? Like, it bothered him that he was not in the Hall of Fame. Is it almost worse to go, well, you passed on, so now we'll give you what you wanted when you're not here to enjoy it? From like his perspective, which he's not here anymore, but you do think about that where it's like, if they did, it's kind of, well, it's not exactly what he wanted. But I think those who, family, whatever, the loved ones would still get the ability to say, all right, justice was served if you do eventually put him in.
And I can understand from baseball's perspective why they didn't do it, because Bud Selig was really tied closely to Bart Giamatti, and Selig blamed Giamatti's death on the Pete Rose scandal, even though you can't connect the two. Selig did. So that's one part of it. And then the other part of it is that when you look at the big picture and you think about, okay, should he have been more contrite? Yes, and he wasn't. And I think that was one of the things that bothered Selig and probably bothers Rob Manfred now, is that he never in his life showed real contrition while admitting by signing baseballs, I gambled on baseball, didn't show any real contrition for it.
Yeah, scoundrel is probably the good word there to use. And it's like, work with us, dude. It would have been really easy for him to, I don't know, pretend, fake it for a while until you get what you want. But baseball would have been happy, I think, for him to do that as well, because it looks better for everybody to put it behind you. But nope, never did happen really to that extent.
Yep. He never admitted to wrongdoing and thumbed his nose at MLB.
Yep.
He made it all worse for himself. Yeah, that is absolutely not wrong. So Pete Rose, at least being considered for entry into baseball's Hall of Fame by Rob Manfred. We have another Battlehawks game coming up this weekend, and we're looking forward to that. And you, as Battlehawks fans, can be sure to catch Battlehawks Hub Weekly, now available on the Sports Hub STL YouTube page with Luke Slaybaugh and Judy Strotter, as they get you set for Battlehawks games every week here on Sports Hub STL. It's presented by Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken with the new Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken Battlehawks box. You can score up to 30% off Battlehawks tickets, plus get 4 of their famous breast strips and a side of potato wedges for just $8.99, only at Lee's, famous for chicken. And Brendan, this week, because Luke Slaybaugh is out for a wedding, he's going to be out of town.
Okay.
I am going to sit in for Luke, and I'm going to do Battlehawks Hub Weekly with Judy.
Caw, let's go.
Caw.
That'll be a lot of fun.
Friday night.
Would that be your first talk show about a St. Louis football team in 9 years?
Oh, great point.
Strictly speaking,
Probably would, yes.
Oh my gosh. Dust it off.
Hey, caw.
Randy Karraker's talking St. Louis professional
Woo.
football.
So
Here we go.
Back in the day, I used to have to come up with 3 hours of sunshine and lollipops for a Rams pregame show.
Yeah.
You talk about a broadcasting challenge. Woo.
I was such a nerd that at the time
You probably listened to every minute.
I listened to it every week, and I was right there saying I got content for you.
Oh, did we ever tell you the story? And I'll tell it because it's
You guys
funny.
got in trouble?
We got in trouble a lot.
Yes.
But
I
one
love this
time,
story.
it was like 2014, maybe 13, or no, it couldn't have been 14. Probably 13 or 12. And Arians had the Cardinals going. Harbaugh had the 49ers going. Pete Carroll had the Seahawks going. And then Jeff Fisher was here. And so we did a segment on who the best coach in the NFC West was. And we said, is it Carroll? Is it Arians? Is it Harbaugh? And they were in Seattle. The Rams were in Seattle. And we get a call from Demoff saying, why isn't Jeff Fisher on your list? And
to be considered.
Yeah. But we also had another time where one of our engineers on a Monday Night Football game, he had access to the Twitter, and he said, I don't know what the score was at halftime, but we put out on the official 101 ESPN account, due to contractual obligations, 101 ESPN must air the second half of the Rams game against them. Oh, man. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, it was funny.
That's pretty good.
Sure, not sure who it was, but it was great. It was very fun. So, yeah, they were bad, man. And Fisher obviously was, he had a foot out the door as soon as he took the job. It was kind of funny. So it was good. Mr. Schaeffer, great.
Yes, sir.
So are you going to be doing Tuesday with us?
I think I'm your Tuesday BR name as
BR, yeah. So no,
as we move forward here
today. Baruch will be back tomorrow, but Baruch has, she's got a doctor's appointment because she is preggers, as you know. So she's going to have a doctor's appointment every Tuesday until her due date of May 24th, and maybe even after May 24th if she goes a little bit long with that. So good seeing you, sir. Thanks. That was fun.
Yep. Looking forward to Tuesdays.
Me too. And a great job by our producer, audio, video engineer, and contributor, the one, the only Matthew Rocchio. Thank you, sir. And we appreciate you being a part of the Randy Karraker Show on Sports Hub STL. And we will see you tomorrow at 10:02. Have a great day, everybody.